Welcome back to another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. Today I'm going to talk about an episode from season 4, episode 15, The Lie, when Ben gets himself in some deep trouble. If you're enjoying these segments, please do hit like and subscribe. In this episode, the character of Nancy Madden is brought back. We first saw the character of Nancy, played by Cindy Fisher, in the episode The Star, when she and Ben faced off in a spelling bee. Now, Cindy is someone that I would come across at auditions at different times, so I was very familiar with her and her work, and I think sometimes, although we're pretty close in age, so depending on the age range of a character, sometimes we actually went up for some of the same roles. Ben gets himself into a really tough position when Nancy confides in him that her mother wants to see her. Now, Nancy's mother ran off when she was just a baby, and her father has resented that forever, keeps very tight reins on Nancy, and definitely does not want her to see her mother, and doesn't know that she's even been approached about this. So she says to Ben, she asks Ben if perhaps he could take her this evening to meet up with her mother in Charlottesville. She knows that Ben has recently gotten his learner's permit and thinks perhaps he could borrow John Boy's car. Well, Ben knows that if he asks John Boy will say no, because you don't actually have your license, and also, why do you want to go? And Nancy has sworn Ben to secrecy about this because she knows if her father finds out, he will basically lock her in her room forever. So Ben likes Nancy, and Nancy is very upset, and like many people, he is drawn into this dilemma and doesn't want to see Nancy miss this one and only opportunity to actually meet her mother. So Ben reluctantly agrees, and that's where all the trouble starts. That evening, Ben waits until everyone has gone to sleep, and then he plans to sneak out and take John Boy's car. Now, as he's lying there under this quilt, I noticed this one square that caught my eye, and the square says, "Hope from May." So I'm not sure who made this quilt. I'm not sure who May was supposed to be, but with these quilts, a lot of times people pulled different squares from all kinds of things. So whoever actually made this quilt likely had this square, and the set dressing people probably figured that's fine. This square could have come from anywhere, and probably didn't think that people would actually have an opportunity to see it and focus on it. But because I've been asked about the quilts and where they came from and who made them, none of which I know, but I did notice this one thing because of that. When they get to Charlottesville, at first Nancy says no, that Ben doesn't need to come into the hotel with her, but then she's a little nervous, and so she does ask Ben to come along. Ben inadvertently leaves the keys in the car, and this creates the opportunity for these two young people who are kind of playing a game of what if we own this car, what if we own that car. And when they get to Ben's car, they're playing, oh, if I had this car, I'd be Bonnie and Clyde. And then he sees that the keys are in the ignition and decides he's going to take it for a little ride. His girlfriend says no, she's not going, but he does take the car and drives around. And then when he comes back to repark the car, he hits another car, and that driver was actually in the car. Now, I do have to call I don't think so on the fact that the driver of the other car got out, and John Boy's car has been driven away. It's dark, it's night, and he takes a little bit of time supposedly writing down this license plate. I'm thinking John Boy's car was too far away for him to have taken this much time and still been able to actually see that license plate. But there we go. It's a television show, and without that license plate, the rest of the story wouldn't exist. So, realism sometimes takes a back seat to story. John Boy does catch Ben sneaking back into the house and wonders about this. At breakfast, when Ben finally is dragged down by Mary Ellen, the sheriff shows up. Now, in this case, it is not Ep Bridges, and they make mention that Ep was not available. He had to be someplace else, and so this is Sheriff Pete. This is the only time we see Sheriff Pete. And my guess is that actor John Crawford, who played Ep Bridges, was probably not available on the day that they needed to shoot this scene. And so they recast the role and came up with a reason why it wasn't Ep and why his deputy is the one who comes out. And of course, he wants to see the car. And despite John Boy saying, I wasn't there, I wasn't in Charlottesville, and all the family saying, no, everyone was home in bed, they go, they look, and of course there is damage on the fender of John Boy's car. And so Ben does confess that he took the car to Charlottesville, but because he's been sworn to secrecy, he lies and says, I don't know what happened, and I was just taking a walk, and he's just digging himself a deeper hole. I noticed at the breakfast table, there is this one angle here where you can see Mary and John. So Aaron and Jason are sitting there. And because of the angle of the camera, I noticed that Mary was sort of holding her head a particular way and her hair was all back. We were often, the girls were told to keep our hair from falling in our face when the camera was on a particular angle. So it looked to me like Mary had been told to get her hair back and keep it back so it wasn't in her face. However, 8 seconds later, we come back to another angle, and you once again see Aaron and Jason. And this time, Aaron's hair is all forward and messier. So I'm not sure which got shot first, but clearly they were shot differently, and probably this one was shot first, the messy one, and then when they went to the other angle, they were trying to clean it up so that they could see her face. But consequently, to me, 8 seconds, doesn't match. Trying to keep his promise when Daddy is angry with Ben and asking him to tell him what happened, because this is really big trouble. And Ben smart mouths him. Not a good move. But Ben is feeling defensive. He's feeling trapped. And John comes after him, picks him up and gets in his face. And, you know, he was seeing the wrath of Daddy. And although he does not hit him, he says, I could beat this out of you, but I'm not going to. Of course, we never actually saw John ever hit any of the children, but he did sometimes let his anger loose just in the frustration of the moment, and also probably trying to impinge on whichever one of the children he felt needed to listen up, but he never went so far as to actually hit anyone. I love how a bit later on, when John Boy's trying to unravel all of what's going on and suspects that perhaps Ben has fallen in with the wrong crowd or that there's a girl involved, and he sees Mary Ellen and Aaron, and he asks Mary Ellen, he goes, "What, do you know what's going on with Ben? Who's he hanging out with at school?" And she's like, "What are you asking me for?" He's like, "Well, because you know everything that goes on." So I loved that, that they wrote that aspect, that they felt that Mary Ellen just knows what's going on. And she's like, "Well, I'm not going to stick my nose in Ben's business." And John Boy expresses to them that Ben really is in serious trouble. And Aaron pipes up and says, "Oh, it's Nancy Madden. He's got a crush on her." And in typical Aaron fashion, Aaron is the one who tattles, not Mary Ellen, which just reminded me of the Homecoming when Aaron was the one who was always tattling. And then again in the episode The Dust Bowl Cousins, when she is kind of told to stop tattling. So that was a character aspect that they carried on with Aaron for some time over the first few seasons. John Boy finds a box of matches in his car from the hotel in Charlottesville. So he goes over there and finds out that Ben was indeed there, and finds out Nancy was there and that her mother was there. So armed with this information, they go back and he and Daddy confront Ben, and Daddy basically says, "You need to go over and you need to tell Nancy that you can't keep this promise anymore." Ben goes over, tries to talk to Nancy. Her father will not let him. So Ben comes back and John goes with him and has a conversation with Eustace, with Nancy's father, and is able to get through to him and recognize that it's really, Eustace confesses, it's really his fear of losing Nancy as well as having lost her mother. So the mother having left really impacted him. And so Nancy reconciles with her father, and the two of them do go with John and John Boy and Ben to the courthouse, and they get the whole thing straightened out. So the lie becomes not a lie anymore, and all is well in Walton land. Interesting note, set-wise, that the area that was the Madden sort of homestead was actually, that house was the house that was used in the ceremony when the Mann family, the immigrants from Germany came, Jewish immigrants, and stayed there. So that was that same house, and this was the area right by Drusilla's Pond. And once again, Drusilla's Pond was drained, and they put this dirt and stuff in, and that's where the animals are, and this is where you see Ben park and run across to get Nancy, and then when John comes in and parks, this is all basically right in Drusilla's Pond. That's what I have for you for this segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons about the episode The Lie. I will be back with more behind the scenes of the Waltons and more of your questions in segments of Ask Judy. Thanks for watching.